Hi everyone, welcome to our next episode of Business Insight podcast. Today we have a special guest with us, Mr. Mithun, who's the CEO of. He has been working extensively in the FMCG vertical space and has taken up this role recently to help Warm Momos establish a new vertical in their brand. Welcome to our podcast.
Thanks.
Thank you
Thanks
for
so
accepting
much.
our invite and being here.
Thanks, Vishal.
So, Mithun, a quick introduction about yourself, and if you could just tell the audience who you are and what you've been doing.
Wonderful. I've been in the food and beverage industry, the FMCG space, for nearly 2 decades now. I started my career very early in 2003 after my business school with Nestle India Limited. I'm a calm person from the outside, but I'm always in a rush from the inside. And in many cases, my thoughts are also extreme and usually balanced most of the cases. In terms of my professional career, back to the times when I was in school, brands really excited me a lot. And from a very young age, whenever I used to go to stores, used to look at brands and packs and read up a lot about them, including advertisements on TV those days, looking at what connects you back from your childhood. I used to be also good at drawing and painting, and invariably, a lot of these competitions were hosted by Maggie as a brand for kids, largely to ensure that kids really try Maggie and to engage them. And one time it was called the Maggie painting contest. I won the first prize and I got a huge goodie bag of Nestle products. I think I was in sixth or seventh standard then. And look at it, my first job also was Nestle. So if you really look at it, there's some connection between what I seeked out when I was a kid versus the kind of role that I did. So coming fast forwarding that, I worked with large brands earlier like Nestle with United Spirits and Britannia, did various roles across the spectrum, largely sales and marketing roles, and then moved on to business roles in terms of P&L management as well as product development in terms of supply chain and most areas I touched on. That was around 2014-15 when I actually spent time in Britannia. I was heading a couple of channels there as well as built a vertical and took it to the next level. Post that, I also realized that there was this whole area of startups, new brands coming up, and that obviously early 2010 was when the whole trend really built up. I was keen on looking at brands where I would be able to make a large difference, and one of the first good opportunities that I got was with ID Fresh Food. ID those days in 2014-15 was largely known as a batter commodity rather than a brand, and today if you really look at it, it's a brand in its own self, catering to natural and wholesome food. So that was a great experience building that whole ecosystem of direct distribution, looking at marketing as a huge play, looking at driving efficient distribution across channels. For example, we used to go to nearly 5,000 stores in Bangalore every day and get 90% efficiency out of it. We moved from being half that within a year's time. Post which I spent time with Sumeru. I was a CEO and executive director. We turned around the company in terms of the way it was getting operated and the way it was trending in terms of revenue as well as the bottom line. 2 years in a row, for the first time ever, Sumeru made profits, which was never in the history in the last 2 decades of that operating. We also grew revenues pretty well. Did a lot of exciting work all around in most of these companies. So right now I lead Wow Momo's vertical where we are really looking at developing this whole FMC. There are different sub verticals and verticals which we'll speak about what we're looking at. That's largely about me, about what I am as well as in terms of what professional career I've done.
Very interesting. I think probably I can connect to what you're saying a little bit because my first job was with Nilgiri's Mechanized Bakery, and I was pretty much doing what you did mention some time back in terms of going and meeting the channel and the distributors and the resellers and basically the Kirana stores and all of these people. So with that, what I would like to lead towards is if you could just give our audience a couple of challenges that you've faced in day-to-day life and the career and how you have sailed through them to overcome these challenges.
So see, if you look at it, different times of your career and different stages of your life, and also because of economical conditions around, most challenges do differ. But I would go back to the last 5 years largely in the new age company scenario. And actually, if you really look at, there are a whole lot of challenges, but to nail just two of them, if you ask me, one of them is in the food and beverage consumer space. There's a whole lot of clutter with brands. If you get into a store, there'll be easily 10,000 plus assortments available, or even higher in some cases. So one of the biggest challenges, how do you really break the clutter but still do business? That was one big challenge. So if you really look at it, my whole way of looking at it is two-pronged, very simple. One is about creating differential categories or creating differential spaces within category. So that is the first one. Number two is about how do you participate in categories which are already existing? How do you participate and gain shares? So those are two large levers. Both are important because the first one is largely how do you create a category? You got to do a lot more work around the product in terms of communication to consumers, in terms of how you are seen, what are you perceived, and how do you really give great product and great experiences to consumer. That holds good for every product, but largely if you're differentiating, what is that differentiation factor which stands out and which actually consumers should buy into? And the pain point there, the challenge there will be largely because when you're differential in terms of the category or subcategory, you also have to communicate, and it's more harder for consumers to get to know you. Number two is about participating in category which is already existing. Either there's a crowd, there are big brands operating in that. How do you ensure that your execution is so great and ensure that you gain shares and gain revenues? Number two, which is not really spoken about by a lot of people, is largely about getting the right talent into your company. And this also suffers because when you are a startup or if you are an emerging brand, it's also a lot more difficult these days to get a good talent. While that is a huge issue, I think, which is faced by even large companies, the way I would look at it to address this issue is one, look at referrals. This really helps because you want people to stay and contribute and grow. Number two is also about ensuring that we really give them the kind of scope in their work to really flourish and do well, wherein you give larger roles, you give larger responsibilities to people, and also ensure that they're happy with their jobs. Give them flexibility in terms of operations, give them flexibility in terms of how they want to balance their work.
I completely agree with you on what you said. And I think the first part where you did mention about the experience factor, and that's becoming more and more crucial, right? I think every industry is facing a challenge today, and you brought it out very well in terms of how this could be managed. So moving forward, if you could just share some thoughts on what is being spoken about in the area of recession. So what's your thought on that, and how do you suggest organizations should go about this in terms of navigating and moving forward?
Yeah, so my take always has been recession or no recession. I think companies and brands should operate like there is a recession coming. While I say this, it is not as easy also because most spends are done in the term called growth. We are spending for growth. I would rather put it that if there is a recession and we know that a recession is coming up, we have to be extremely sensitive to a couple of things. One is about invariably in terms of the kind of spends that we've been doing. Spends have to be converted to investments. I think recession or no recession, I would rather look at everything this way, that is it an investment that is going to yield an outcome very clearly, or is it just a spend which you're not sure of yielding outcomes in terms of revenues or in terms of growth or in terms of any outcomes which are relative to the plans that you've made. Look at your variable costs. What are your variable costs? Focus hardcore on efficiency because everywhere there's efficiency, something which you can always derive.
So yeah, cut cost, look at investment is what you are saying in terms of recession. How do you see Wow Momos in terms of plan of expansion and moving forward? If you could share some thoughts. And today, with the world going digital more and more, how is this coming into play for Wow Momos? Can we hear some thoughts from you?
So our Momos as a brand has been doing extremely well. We have nearly doubled our revenues from last year. We are one of the fastest growing QSR brands in the country. We have 550 plus stores across the country. Still, we believe that it's underpenetrated. And it's also a brand which has got very high recall. across consumer sets. So we're doing really well. And the new vertical that we have launched is the FMCG vertical. Largely, this is what I handle and I drive. And in the FMCG vertical, we've really focused on ensuring that there are very critically important areas which we address from a category perspective, from a distribution perspective, from a strategy go to market perspective. So we've done that. We've already launched our momos into market, the retail format. It's available across modern retail, including some supermarkets, standalone supermarkets, a few GT stores, as well as obviously all the e-commerce, quick commerce channels it's available. So we've done all of that and we are coming up with a whole lot of interesting launches across categories. We are also getting into beverages, we're getting into noodles and sauces, even that's also coming through. So we're looking at a large portfolio which will cover a gamut of FMCG consumer products. Now, the use of digital, we use a lot of digital as well as social media and other platforms to really reach out to consumers. We activate all of these quick commerce channels also and also have a connect between our mainline network that we have. We have actually 5 million plus unique user base because we collect them across our QSR chain. And that's one of the key arsenal that we have wherein we can reach out to this kind of database. So that's a work being done. Other than that, we've also taken some great initiatives. We have a WhatsApp initiative where you do your orders on WhatsApp and all of that for the QSR business. We are a company which is a forward-looking company which focuses on building the brand as well as giving great products to consumers. So that's what we're doing, and a lot of excitement, a lot of things happening, and a lot of new launches in the FMCG space coming up.
That's really interesting. And I think I would love to probably pick some of your momos from the retail place and then look at it.
If you're happy shopping with DMart, then DMart is the place. We run pretty good offers there. Otherwise, Instamart, Blinkit, Big Basket, Zepto, all of those have carrier products.
DMart may be a good one for me because I've got a couple of DMarts around. So, because my daughter is a great fan of momos and she likes all the flavors, right? And for me, when I heard about warm momos, it was like totally new sometime back. I was introduced to momos because I was in Nainital for some time. And momos was something which was really nice for us during the evening times.
Yeah.
And when India started talking about momos and Wow Momos as a brand, I think that was really a different stuff. So that's really nice. As you mentioned that you've got this huge network. How do you basically use this set of the data? And because today, as we know, the data is the new oil and we keep saying, so how do you utilize this? And do you have any analytics and reporting which you do using this kind of a data? So if you can just give some insights on that.
Yeah, we have a lot of information, a lot of data, and we have a lot of real time information which comes in also. We are analytics heavy. We do have teams which run analytics for us, as well as we use a couple of BI tools to ensure that it helps really capture that data and really throw out that data in the form that we need. In a nutshell, if I may answer, we do use a lot of this and we feel very clearly that advancement in technology will also help us take those decisions and on data. While there's so much of data, how do we really look at it? So all of those, I'm sure we are also progressing on this front, but we already have a setup which is helping us presently the way we operate.
Good to hear that. And if you look at it today, everybody is talking about going digital, and digital transformation is something which every organization is talking about. So, how would you rate your organization right now in terms of this journey of digital transformation? And do you feel that you're already there? And if yes, how do you come up with that? Or if you feel that you've got still ways to go forward, can you just share some ideas on that?
No, for sure. There's a lot of headroom, a lot of things to catch up on in terms of digitizing the entire organization, in terms of how do we really manage everything together. While one form of digital play is in the marketing space, product space, which is already there, consumer space, which is there. On the other side, on the back end, there's a whole lot of things which are relevant and which needs to be done. If I may answer that, really, we have a lot more journey to take in terms of digitizing our backend, digitizing organization end to end, connecting everything end to end and making sense of it. We are an organization with around 6,000 plus employees and across various locations across the country.
So, Mithun, maybe before we close up and wrap for this session, if you could just share probably three quick thoughts for today's startups, because there are a lot of people who are getting into this journey of entrepreneurship and a lot of startups coming in. And you have been a person who has gone through this in terms of scaling organizations, right?
I would say that the first thing is to really recognize and identify what is your moat or what is your core. There should be something that really makes you a little more differential. It doesn't need to be a complete different product or a service. It could also be the way you execute could be very different. So that's really needed. So identifying that differential and creating that as your moat and really going deeper into it is, I think, one of the most important things to figure out. While just being different is not enough, you also have to get deeper into that. That's one. Number two is about very clearly managing your business well in terms of your finances. Extremely important because money is limited, and money that is invested is better than money that is spent. So in the whole urge of scaling into a larger revenue or a larger base, a lot of organizations forget that this creates a lot of limitations in terms of funds, because today we spoke about recession and things like that. That should be the thought invariably every time when you are looking at this. So I would say managing your finances, managing the monies is extremely important, and that most startups don't really do it. Number three, how do you get the right people together? How do you really make them part of your story is extremely important. Making them part of your story is not just by giving good incentives and things like that, but could be a lot more about how do you bring in a lot more ownership from these guys. I still remember in ID, we ended up giving ESOPs to even our sales guys who went to stores to sell. As simple as that, we identified in different locations the top guys who are good performers as well as who have been with us for some time, and we rewarded them ESOPs. And little did they know that will really go to the next level. And today, all those guys are still there, and they have spread a huge positivity across to the organization as well as the people around. And hence, the talent is retained. They are the ones who know the stores really well, they know the owners really well. If normally a brand would do 40, 50 store coverage a day, these guys do 70 store coverage a day and also get 90% productivity. And that's extremely important to make everybody in the chain as part of your team, not only by giving them incentives, but even by creating that great atmosphere to work, making them part of it. A lot of founders are very critical about letting go equity. According to me, I think they should let go some equity for the people of the organization. And at every level, invariably you look at 90% of brands looking at giving that only the top layer of the company. According to me, we should look at it across. If you're doing well, if you're a performer, if you've been with the company, stood by the company, I think we should reward these guys. So these three things, according to me, if it is done well, for most startups, I think very clearly that you will at least get that headroom, you'll get that runway, you'll be able to scale faster, you'll be able to go through all kinds of troubled times very clearly.
Totally agree with you. And I think brands need to touch lives of every stakeholder, right? It's not just your customer, it's like everyone in the organization, outside the organization. So I totally agree with you on that. And with that note, thanks a lot for spending time with us and sharing these valuable insights and thoughts for our audience here. Thank you once again, Mithun, for this wonderful talk.
Thanks. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.